what we'd like you to do is look over what you've written and see if you can find 3, maybe 5, maybe find more than that, but 3 to 5 is a good number to shoot for. Words or short phrases that seem to stand out to you in some way. They resonate, they seem to be important, they seem to be getting at the root of some ideas that are important to you. And I want you to emphasize them in some way. So get them to stand out. You could underline them, you could circle them, you could box them in. We worked with that water-soluble material. You could take those watercolor pencils, you could actually dip it in water, maybe take a different color, and rewrite the word to make it a different color from what the rest of it was written in. If you have a yellow water-based marker or something like that, you can even kind of color over top the word. I'll just show you the one that I started doing, just to give you a couple ideas. So what I did is I boxed in the words with some ink, just so that I could see those words. And then I used my yellow pen, and I sort of colored the box in. And when I did that, it blended that watercolor material to make that kind of lighter green color. So then I took another pen and wrote back over top of it so I could see the word again.
So of course you can just paint pages. So, you know, if you're feeling blue, then you could just paint a page blue. And I don't try to be neat about it. I let things smear and I leave spaces and I scrub. And I do like the bristle brushes, the stiff bristle brushes, because they just allow me to push the paint around. They don't hold as much water as a watercolor brush. A watercolor brush is really formulated to hold a lot of water. Okay, so you can just kind of scrub. You can then rinse your brush out. You can use different colors, so maybe different kinds of blues if you're feeling blue. But you know, blue can also be a calm, peaceful color. It really depends on the context, and it depends on how light or how dark. So you could play around with that. You could do whole pages. So if you're ever thinking, oh, well, I just don't know what to do, just paint. Okay. But then simple things like salt and bubble wrap. Bubble wrap's one of my favorites because it's really, you could do this, like once this dries, you could do the bubble wrap on top, but just painting the bubbles.
Now, do you ever use acrylics?
Sometimes, usually the acrylics are more of a top layer in my journal. I haven't used them so much over the last couple of years, but in some of my journals, there's a lot of acrylic. And sometimes it depends on the artwork I'm making. So if I'm doing a lot of acrylic painting, then a lot of times acrylic ends up in my journal. So you can stamp it and then just pull it right up. And then the paint sort of kind of puddles. So if you leave it on for a little bit longer, I don't know if you can see, there's actually wrinkles in the bubbles. So once that paint dries, those little wrinkles will stay there. So those little lines and marks. So you can leave the plastic, the bubble wrap on there for a while.
One of the things that can be interesting to do with photos is if you use some tracing paper, you can, you know, create a kind of an interesting drawing from it that's a little different, but has some interesting things that could go on. And then in the context of maybe what I'm writing about, if I want this to be part of it, I could cut this out, use some glue stick, glue this in, and I can have that image as part of what's going on, but I can still see the writing underneath. So there's some interesting things that you can do with that tracing paper. Once again, creating these layers between things. So these layers could be on top of the paper.
If you're ready, you can go ahead and, like I said, you can blend it out as much as you want. Or maybe, you know, you could also use watercolor paint. So instead of just using plain water, you can get out your watercolor paint and maybe mix in. But think about the colors that you're going to use. So if your writing is in blue, you might not want to use blue paint. You might want to use yellow or a pink so that the blue will mix with it and kind of create something a little more interesting than just blue and blue. Because blue plus blue is blue. So
that's good math, right?
I know. But why is it that 1 + 1 isn't more 1? But anyway, so just when you're ready, go ahead and start kind of blending and moving that watercolor pencil around. And you know, depending if you used a pen that's water soluble, it will bleed. Maybe it will be totally obliterated, but that's kind of an interesting thing to allow to happen. Give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll share something new with you.
And here's, I showed you that, those 2 pages that I had written. I just did the water on the one side, and you can kind of see the effect that that's having there.